Welcome to LyFiveElements, where we are dedicated to sharing the wisdom of traditional Chinese metaphysics with the world. Our mission is to teach complex subjects like the four pillars of destiny, Qi Feng Shui, and more in simple, easy to understand English. Subscribe and share our content to help spread this ancient knowledge. Your support is what drives us forward. We also offer personalized one-on-one consultations to guide you on your metaphysical journey. Feel free to leave a comment or contact us directly for more information. Thank you for being part of our community. Hello everyone, I'm Mari. In the last two lessons, we explored the ups and downs of a person's life through case studies. In today's lesson, we will dive deeper into the Bazi chart by discussing the palace positions, which represent different family members and your relationship with them. Using a charting software, we can generate the four pillars of destiny, where each character represents a family member. Let's start with the year pillar. The year pillar represents the ancestral palace. The upper character here is called the heavenly stem of the year, or the year stem, representing the father and the father's family, including uncles and grandfathers. The lower character of the ancestral palace in the year pillar is called the earthly branch of the year, or the year branch, representing the mother and the mother's family, such as uncles from the mother's side, grandmother, and grandfather. For the month pillar, the upper character is called the heavenly stem of the month, or the month stem. It represents the father, elder brothers and sisters, as well as senior people in the society. The earthly branch of the month, or the month branch, known for its significant energy, is called the month ruler. It represents the mother, younger siblings, and younger people in society. Therefore, the month pillar stands for the palace of parents, siblings, and social relationships. Next is the day pillar. The upper character here is called the heavenly stem of the day, or the day stem, representing oneself and referred to as the day master. The earthly branch of the day, or the day branch, represents the spouse and the spouse family. For a woman, it represents her husband and his entire family. For a man, it represents his wife and her family. The hour pillar is known as the palace of children. The upper character, the heavenly stem of the hour, or the hour stem, represents the eldest child. The lower character, the earthly branch of the hour, or the hour branch, represents subsequent children. The core principle for distinguishing palace positions and the six relatives is whether the element is favorable or unfavorable. If it is favorable, you will have a good relationship with that relative and receive their help. If it is unfavorable, your relationship will be poor and you will not receive their assistance. Let's demonstrate with a case study. You can open the charting software and randomly generate a Bazi chart. Let's analyze this Bazi. First, let's look at the relationship between the month ruler and the day master. Water produces wood, reducing its energy by 40 points. Additionally, the three earth elements restrain the water, indicating a weak individual. For a weak water element day master, favorable elements are metal and water, while unfavorable elements are wood, earth, and fire. Let's examine the relationship with his family members in the palace positions. First, look at the year stem, the upper character of the year pillar. The year stem is water, representing his father and the father's family. Since water and metal are favorable elements, he will receive help from his father's family and have a good relationship with them. Next, the year branch is earth, which restrains water and is an unfavorable element. This represents his mother and her family. Therefore, he will have a poor relationship with them and will not receive their help. The month stem, the upper character of the month pillar is water. This represents his elder siblings, his father, and senior people in society. Since water is favorable, he will receive help from them and have good relationships with them. The lower character of the month pillar is the monthly order. Water produces wood, but since he is weak, Producing wood depletes his energy. Thus, his relationship with his younger siblings, mother, and younger people in society will not be good. The day pillar represents oneself. The lower character of the day pillar represents the spouse and the spouse family. In this case, since it is a male, it represents his wife. Earth restrains water, which is unfavorable, indicating a poor relationship with his wife and her family. Finally, the hour pillar represents the children palace. The upper character of the hour pillar represents the eldest child, which is water, a favorable element. He will have a good relationship with his eldest child, who will be dutiful and supportive. The lower character of the hour pillar represents subsequent children, and if it is an unfavorable element such as earth restraining water, the relationship with the subsequent children will not be as good as with the first child. You can compare your own Bazi chart to see how your relationships with your family members are. Age periods for palace positions. After generating the 4 pillars of destiny, each character represents a specific age period. The year pillar represents one's childhood. The heavenly stem of the year represents ages 1 to 9. And the earthly branch of the year represents ages 10 to 18. Each character generally represents a period of 9 years. The 4 pillars in a Bazi chart not only represent different family relationships, but also correspond to different stages of life. Once the 4 pillars are generated, each character symbolizes a specific age range. The year pillar represents a person's childhood. The heavenly stem of the year pillar covers ages 1 to 9, while the earthly branch represents ages 10 to 18. Typically, each character in the chart represents around 9 years of life. The month pillar represents young adult. The heavenly stem of the month represents ages 19 to 27, and the month ruler represents 28 to 36. The day pillar represents one's middle age. Since the day master represents oneself and does not represent time, the earthly branch of the day represents ages 37 to 45, generally considered middle age. The hour pillar represents one's old age. The heavenly stem of the hour represents 9 years, specifically from ages 46 to 54, while the earthly branch of the hour represents age 55 and above, covering the remaining years of one's life. In ancient times, lifespans were much shorter, so the age of 55 and above was considered to be the later years of life. Core principle of age periods for palace positions is that if the palace position represents a favorable element for you, the corresponding time period will generally be more successful and favorable. If it represents an unfavorable element, that time period will not be as smooth. Let's use a case study to explain this in detail. You can open a charting website on your computer and input a random Bazi. Let's examine what happens at each age period. First, we need to analyze the strength of his day master and identify his favorable elements. He has an earth day master. What is his relationship with the month ruler? Wood restrains earth, so we subtract 40 points. Additionally, earth restrains the water in the month stem and the hour stem, which consumes his energy. This indicates a weak day master, making fire and earth his favorable elements, and wood, water, and metal are his unfavorable elements. Now let's look at the year pillar, which represents his childhood. The year stem represents ages 1 to 9, is unfavorable for him, indicating a difficult period during these years. The year branch is metal, and since earth produces metal, it is also unfavorable for him. Thus, this period will also be difficult. Similarly, in the month pillar, earth restrains water, which is unfavorable. His energy is insufficient, and he is trying to restrain others, making his youth period, represented by the month pillar, generally unfavorable. Since wood restrains earth, this period will also be difficult. However, his middle age will be relatively better, The middle age period represented by the day branch, ages 37 to 45, is supported by Earth, which is favorable. Thus, his luck will improve significantly during his middle age. In old age, represented by the hour pillar, the upper part of the hour pillar is water, which Earth restrains. This is also unfavorable, indicating difficulties between ages 46 and 54. However, after age 55, the lower part of the hour pillar is Earth, his favorable element. This suggests that after age 55, his life will be relatively smooth. This demonstrates the relationship between palace positions, age periods, and favorable elements. The core principle is that if the palace position represents a favorable element, the corresponding time period will be smoother. If it represents an unfavorable element, the time period will be difficult. Each character generally represents about 9 years. The Day Master does not represent years, but each of the other characters represents about 9 years. The hour pillar governs age 55 and onwards, covering the entire remaining period of his life. This demonstrates the relationship between palace positions, age periods, and favorable elements. The core principle is that if the palace position represents a favorable element, the corresponding time period will be smoother. If it represents an unfavorable element, the time period will be difficult. Each character generally represents about 9 years. The Day Master does not represent years, but each of the other characters represents about 9 years. The hour pillar governs ages 55 and onwards, covering the entire remaining period of his life. In today's lesson, we learned about the family relationships and different life stages represented by the 4 pillars in a Bazi chart. Up next, we will dive into an important topic, the divine influences and Fengshui stars. Please see the next lesson where we discuss how this can impact your life. Don't miss out. Hit subscribe and share to join us on this incredible journey of discovery. Your support fuels our passion to keep creating. Any questions or need personalized guidance? Leave us a comment or get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for being part of the LyFiveElements family. If anything is unclear, feel free to drop a comment below. I would love to discuss and explore these topics with you. And for those of you who want to understand your Bazi chart but find the learning process too complicated, you can always message me for a one-on-one consultation. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support truly motivates me to keep sharing this knowledge. See you in the next lesson.